What's up, Jets fans? We got Jets insider Zack Rosenblatt from The Athletic, co-host of Jets Final Drive on SNY with Connor Hughes, to join me today because this has been a week for these New York Jets. And who better to get on the show than Zack himself? The last time we had him on Jets Media was during training camp, previewing the season. And now the Jets are 1-7, and they trade away Sauce, they trade away Quinnen. So I have a lot I have to ask Zack. So let's bring him on in the building. Zack, welcome back to Jets Media, my man.
Thanks for having me, Richie. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you, man. This week for Jets fans, Zack, I mean, going into the trade deadline, a lot of people were talking about a lot of these names, but nobody saw the Sauce Gardner trade coming. So that's the first thing I just have to jump right into. Were you excited by the Sauce Gardner trade? Because I was absolutely floored when I saw that news break.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, I was anticipating a Quinnen Williams trade. And then when the news broke about Sauce, it was one of those situations where I'm like, is that a real tweet? Well, because initially Sauce had the tweet where he's like, it's been real New York or whatever. And I'm like, so I started texting a bunch of people like, is he trolling? You're like, yeah, he's got to be trolling, right? Like, what does that mean? So I did not see that coming. I think Muji did a really good job of keeping it close to the vest. They didn't really shop him around. This was really just the Colts that they were talking to about him. And they did that because they weren't trying to trade him, but they were willing to, is what it wound up being. And so, they've proven with this new regime that nobody is sacred, I guess. And it's not what I didn't expect. And once that happened, it felt like all bets were off. So Quinnen, I was like, all right, he's definitely in trade now. I already thought he was anyway. And then I'm like, I started, even just from rumblings and hearing about what was being talked about around the league, like, I'm like, all right, Jermaine and Brees, like, at least one of them is also going to get traded, is the vibe I got. It didn't wind up happening because the Jets, to Muji's credit, like he talked about this the other day, and I've dug into a little more. He has, starting week 4, they do have like a meeting where they discuss the value of each of their players, so there's not like recency bias is the idea. And so they have a set value for each guy on what they think they're worth. And if somebody comes offering a trade, they're not going to like sway off that just because we're 1-7, or if they were 7-1, like they're not going to change. Like if somebody offers you, at or above the value that they have for these guys, they're going to do it. And they didn't feel like they'd met that value for Jermaine or Brees Hall. So that's why they're still here.
Yeah, I learned a lot about Darren Muji. I think he did a tremendous job and really shows you the type of general manager he is. And that tweet that Sauce Gardner sent out, I literally, right when he sent it, I quote tweeted it like, stop trolling Sauce. Like, we're in the middle of like waiting for news. And then the news breaks 3 minutes later, and I immediately responded to myself, all caps, he was not trolling. What? So I'm right there with you, man. Like, Sauce usually messes with us. So like, I literally had zero worry in my mind when Sauce sent that out that he's actually traded. And from a Jets fan perspective, Zack, I think the Sauce Gardner trade, there's two reactions. There's the emotional, we love Sauce, he's one of our favorite players, gets the extension, like, oh my gosh, we're missing out on Sauce Gardner, who's supposed to be the face of this defense for the next 6 years. But then when you see what the Jets get in return, not just 2 first-round picks, but A.D. Mitchell, which is, I think, the cherry on top of this entire trade that could be the missing piece for this wide receiver room. Now, listen, he has to prove himself before I really give him that. But what do you think about the compensation? And just from Darren Muji's perspective, do you think this was the smart move right now to get rid of Sauce Gardner, get 2 firsts, and A.D. Mitchell for Sauce?
Yeah, I mean, that's an offer that's hard to turn down. And, I thought the most interesting thing Muji said the other day, and I kind of knew this to a degree, but I didn't think anything of it. But like the way he talked about how they built the contract, so if they wanted to trade him, they could, which is not something you usually hear about like a star player. And I think they clearly are trying to structure these deals to where if you want to get out of a contract and get draft picks or whatever it is, like they have the ability to do it without taking on too much of it. Like they're really only paying Sauce like this year, and there's not really much dead cap beyond this year, which is pretty remarkable for a guy who just signed his contract. And so, we'll see if this was the right move or not. It's one of those things where, I haven't been covering the team as long as some of the other guys, but they were here for the Idzik 12. They were here when Jamal Adams netted a bunch of first-round picks. Obviously, they got a lot of good players with those picks, but they didn't get any wins. So at the end of the day, all that matters is if they get the quarterback. And if they get the right quarterback, if this helps them get there, then it absolutely was the right move. I see the thought process, especially for a GM inheriting this roster. Sauce wasn't his guy. They did extend him, but they also didn't really have any time with him in the building to learn. And if they loved what they saw, they would not have traded him even for this much. Because if you believe a guy is a superstar, you don't just give him up, even if you get like I keep saying, like the Broncos aren't answering the phone for Patrick Surtain right now. The Jets were answering for Sauce Gardner, so
Mm.
that tells you that they maybe weren't head over heels in love with him, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But we're gonna find out how if that was the right call. And I always go back to like the why I lean more towards I wouldn't have done it is just because I'm not the first one to say this, but like the goal is to draft somebody of his caliber. So like you trade him away, and then you're hoping that with one of the other picks, you get somebody that's as good as he was. And so, but but I also see the flip side where it's like clearly we've emphasized defense and it didn't work out. Like it's time for us to put all our eggs in the offense basket would be my guess, and get a QB, get another wide receiver, reload the offensive line, and just become a good offensive team and believe in your coaching staff's ability to develop defensive players on the other side.
Yeah, and interesting thing is for me, the trade deadline, I saw potentially two players that are untouchable, Garrett Wilson and Sauce, but it felt like Garrett Wilson was a legit untouchable, where I think the Buffalo Bills, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was teams calling the Jets and basically they weren't even entertaining. They weren't even willing to listen about Garrett Wilson. I mean, that is actually something I want to talk to you about because I feel like Darren Muji was open to hear offers about every single player on this roster besides Garrett Wilson. So what does that tell you about their loyalty to the Jets wide receiver, Garrett?
Yeah, I think the Giants were another one that at least made the call after the Sauce trade as well. Yeah, I mean, I think it ties back to what I said a minute ago to a degree, where they want to whoever the next quarterback is, they want to cultivate an environment where that guy can step in and be set up for success. And you do that with a quality wide receiver one, which you have in Garrett Wilson. You do that with a good offensive line, which I think they have. 3/5 of it is locked in for next year. We'll see what they do with like John Simpson and ABT. But you can at least fill those spots even if you lose those guys. Like I feel good about Olu and Membu and Titman. Like I think those are just three solid, and Membu might be like an absolute stud. So, and then depending on what you do at running back, but you can find running backs, and then you have a good tight end, I think, in Mason Taylor. So, like they're building it so the quarterback can come in, and you don't trade Garrett Wilson away because then you need to also find a number one receiver in addition to a quarterback, as opposed to having a guy in Garrett who says all the right things. Everybody loves him in here, and he's a high quality player that just hasn't had a quarterback that can get him the football. So, for Garrett's sake, I hope they get the right quarterback. I would say too.
Yeah, and you said something earlier that I've been saying too. It's like all these draft picks the Jets got will mean nothing unless they hit on their quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Douglas had, in my opinion, a tremendous draft with everybody besides Zach Wilson, and that's what really everything fell apart. And then they went the aggressive route to get Aaron Rodgers. If you miss on the quarterback, all these draft picks are going to mean absolutely nothing. So now switching over to the Quinnen Williams trade, this was one of those that we all expected. And I got to be honest, man, the value the Jets got were mind-blowing, and seeing you and Connor figure out what the trade was live was pretty awesome, by the way. So what is your reaction? The Jets get not just a second this year, but a first in a stacked and loaded 2027 class. Smith gets thrown in there. I'm not really too high on him because of his ability to play in the NFL has not really looked great in Dallas, but we'll see if this Jets coaching staff can unlock something in him. But the draft compensation, what are your reaction that the Jets get for Quinnen Williams?
I mean, it's pretty shocking. I don't know that any other team was going to give that much for him. And that's kind of the Cowboys. They negotiate against themselves. And not only that, like you're not only getting this draft capital, but it's not even like the Colts, where the Colts draft picks, they're 2 firsts, which is amazing, but it's probably going to be at the bottom of the first round at the very least this year. And, you'll see how Daniel Jones does next year. But like the Cowboys are probably not making the playoffs this year. Like they would have to have a really, really good end of the season to do that. And there's no guarantee they make it next year either. Like this is not a team that really makes it every year anymore. So you have potentially a pick in like the 35 to 40 range this year, which is right outside the first round. And then you have an extra first round pick next year in a class that everybody is saying is, it's too early to actually listen to that stuff, but everybody's saying is like one of the most talented ever. So, blown away that they were able to pull that off. And, even removing the value, like I get it. Like, Quinnen, I think has become underrated, I think, by this fan base to a degree because he doesn't get like the sacks that he did earlier in his career. But if you look around the league, like if you ask anybody around the league, he's considered a top 5 to top 10 defensive tackle. And it goes back to like, you're trying to draft a Quinnen Williams, but at the same time, his contract was coming up to where it was going to be a lot of non-guaranteed. He was going to want more money. He's getting closer to 30. And frankly, he deserves a shot to be part of a winner. So I think it was a mutually beneficial departure. I think he wanted out at this point. I know that pretty confidently.
And there was a lot of bidders, right, for Quinnen? Like there was a lot of teams involved. It wasn't just
Yeah,
Dallas.
yeah. There's definitely other teams. I think people have been calling for weeks, and the Jets are pretty steadfast in that we're not trading him unless we're blown away. They even told him as much, even as he like was letting everybody know he wanted to leave. Like they weren't going to force their hand, and then the Cowboys. I don't know if they got them over a barrel or Muji just all of a sudden Jerry offered
Mhm.
something up. He's like, okay, we'll do that. And then Mozzie Smith is someone that that it's Muji's done a good job so far of just taking flyers on guys that
Yeah,
are low cost that were drafted high. Like that's a really smart way to go about it. Try to be a lot of times these guys get better on the second team. Not a lot of times, but sometimes they get better on the second team.
change of
Like
scenery.
you said, I'm less confident in him than I am in like AD Mitchell. And I don't know how much John Mechie's going to bring, but taking flyers on all guys like that, recently high drafted players, like there's a reason why they were drafted highly. Maybe the environment they went into wasn't a good fit for them, and so if
Mhm.
they can get anything out of Maisie Smith, and that's a bonus as well.
And something I noticed, Zach, we found out that Quinnen quietly told the Jets that he wants out.
Yep.
They mutually agreed, and they really wanted to keep it in house, and they did brilliantly. And when the Jets got their first win, you saw Quinnen Williams hugging Aaron Glenn, and he probably knew, like, I'm out of here. So, like, it really shows you Quinnen loves Aaron Glenn. He had a really good thing to say about him in his press conference with Dallas, but that was not leaked. And then the Sauce Gardner trade, no one knew about. Like, what are your thoughts about this front office and the Jets and this new regime now that you're, covering them? This is the first season with this new regime. From a media perspective, what's your overall thoughts of Aaron Glenn handling the media? Obviously, he's not telling you the quarterback is. I see the back and forth with the media. Like you talked to Darren Muji this week. What's your overall perception? The last question here about Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. And what would you say to Jets fans? Because a lot of people early on in the season, midway through the season, want him gone, one and done. Like, based off of you covering them and seeing them build this team from the ground up, what is your first impression so far?
I mean, in terms of the purely the coaching and the direction of the organization side of things, I'd say Darren Muji has impressed me quite a bit in a lot of ways. I think they took a lot of low risk free agent signings. The Justin Fields one, they keep getting criticized nationally. I think it's kind of BS because that was a low risk contract in my mind. You took a flyer on a guy, you only paid him 20 million. I know it sounds like a lot, but that's 20th or 21st amongst starting quarterbacks. So it's not like you paid an insane amount. They have nearly $100 million in cap space for next year, so it didn't hurt them next year. And you can either bring him back as a backup / bridge guy, or you can get rid of him and not really lose that much money out of it. And so I actually thought that was structured in a smart way. Brandon Stevens, everybody criticized them. They bid against themselves maybe, but I think he's been pretty solid. We'll see how he is as a CB1. The draft is always TBD until a couple years in, but I really like the first two picks. We're going to find out about what Azaria is made of. We're going to find out what Malachi is made of. I think Kiko's looked fine for a 5th-round pick, and so that sounds like a solid draft class, even if it's not like an absolute home run. And the trades, I think he's been pretty remarkable, honestly, like just getting value. Like the Jarvis Brownlee one in particular, but Harrison Phillips and Jawan Briggs too. Just like swapping late round picks to get these like starting caliber players on low cost under team control beyond this year. Like doesn't really get much better than that, including with Mitchell and Smith as well. Mechie will be a free agent. So I think Muji's been solid, a solid BB plus. And then Glenn, I think there's been a lot more concerning stuff. I think he's been kind of learning on the fly a little bit how to be a head coach in the NFL. I think he came in thinking it was going to be not easy for him, but that he had the training, so it was going to come to him easy, and it has not been that. And he's made a lot of bad mistakes in terms of decision making. And I don't make too much about the media stuff as maybe a lot of other people seem to. I think he's not helping himself at the podium, but as everybody says, like if they were winning, nobody would give a crap about all that stuff. So, but at the end of the day, I'm not ready to evaluate him yet. If he shows improvement for the second half of the season, if this team looks better prepared at the beginning of games, if the offense is a little more consistent, if the defense plays better. I mean, they just got rid of 2 of their best players, but if you see them just fundamentally looking better, the penalties have cut back, but you need better tackling, you need better communication on the back end. Well, the running game needs to be better defensively. And so if they can, they're not going to fix everything. They're probably going to lose a lot of games, but as long as you see this team still buying into what he's doing, not giving up when the season's pretty much already been, they're waving the white flag already. But like if you see these guys competing and not getting blown out, then I think you'll feel a little better going into next year.
Well, 9 more games of this season, and we shall see what they look like. 1-7 coming out of the bye. Will the Jets get some wins to piss off Jets fans because they get a worse draft pick? Well, Zach, I'm rooting for wins. I don't know. I mean, that's how I'm wired.
Wins are better.
I just can't root against my team. Whether I root for a win or loss, Zach, it makes no impact. Like, I'm not out there controlling anything. If I'm rooting for a loss, it's not changing anything, which is why I go into the approach of just root for the team. And if they lose, better draft pick. If not, let's go. We're winning some football games. Zach, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on Jets Media. Always a pleasure to get your insight about the New York Jets. Make sure you guys go check them out, covering the New York Jets on The Athletic, of course, with Connor Hughes over at SNY. We appreciate you, Zach, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Richie.
Big shout out to Sleeper for being the proud sponsor of Jets Media all season long. If you guys want to check them out, the link is at the top of the chat. You guys get a 100% match up to $100 when you use my code JETS. Build your parlays, win some cash over there on Sleeper. Win up to on a 100x your money over there on Sleeper Picks. Bet responsibly. Terms and conditions apply, of course. Legal in 25 states. I've been having some fun on that Sleeper app, and you should too. Click the link in the description, folks, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let's go Jets.